In this video, we're going to show you how to install the Rokblokz Skid Plates on this Polaris Turbo R 2-seater. Use an impact driver and a 10mm socket to remove the OEM skid plate. There are also two small side sections that will be removed with the T40 Torx. To install the rock slider mounts, you will need hardware bag number 1, which contains M8 hex bolts, flat washers, long rock slider mounts, and short rock slider mounts. The tools you will need are a 13mm wrench and channel locks. You will be installing the rock slider mounts into two holes that are in the machine frame. The shorter rock slider mount goes towards the front of the machine, and the longer rock slider mount goes towards the rear of the machine. Make sure that the angled face of the rock slider mount is facing down. Use channel locks to hold the rock slider mount in place as you tighten the bolt in the back. Repeat these same steps on the other side of the machine. To install the rock sliders, you will need hardware bag number 2, which contains M8 button head bolts, flat washers, cup washers, M6 hex flange bolts, and M6 metal clips. The tools you'll need are an impact driver with a 10mm socket and a 5mm Allen wrench. Fit the M6 metal clips onto the rock slider in these 4 locations, making sure that the threaded part of the clip is facing up. Place the M8 button head bolts loosely and then the M6 flange bolts in the bottom 2 holes. Tighten up the button head bolts and flange bolts completely. To install the rear skid plate section, you'll need hardware bag number 3, which contains cup washers, M6 hex flange bolts, M8 button head bolts, and nut plate number 2. The tools you'll need are an impact driver with a 10mm socket and a 5mm Allen wrench. Place nut plate number 2 in the back of the machine near the recovery point. Hold up the rear skid plate section and install the hardware combinations as shown in the diagram. Note these 3 half circles. They will line up with the 3 corresponding half circles in the main skid plate. To install the main skid plate section, you will need hardware bag number 5, which contains cup washers, M6 hex flange bolts, M8 button head bolts, nut plate number 3, and M6 metal clips. The tools you'll need are an impact driver with a 10mm socket and a 5mm Allen wrench. Hold up the main skid plate so that it sits flush with the rear skid plate. Loosely install the hardware combinations as shown in the diagram. For hardware combination D, slide the nut plate in here using something skinny to hold it in place. Then install the M8 button head bolts. To install the front skid plate section, you will need hardware bag number 5, which contains cup washers, M8 button head bolts, nut plate number 1, and nut plate number 2. The tool you'll need is a 5mm Allen wrench. Place the nut plates in these locations. Hold up the front skid plate and install hardware combinations F and G. Go through and ensure that all the hardware is tightly fastened.
Congratulations, you did it! You are awesome.